I'd like to also introduce a couple of other folks that we brought along today for the town meeting. Representing the aerospace physiology career field at the USAF Academy is Colonel Jennifer Giovanetti, and she is an instructor of biology out there as well. Also on the line with us is Colonel Eric Henriksen. He will be the next 13H career field manager starting 1 April. Additionally, we have Captain Garnsey, who is a recent 13H upgraded aerospace physiologist, as well as Lieutenant Colonel Julianne Gillespie, who's up here at the half and is an aerospace physiologist as well. So first, wanted to talk a little bit about the aerospace physiology career field. An aerospace physiologist is primarily responsible for educating our air crew, not only Air Force, but joint air crew, on the physiological stresses and human factor implications associated with the aerospace environment, primarily to educate the person with how their body is going to respond in that environment and how to utilize the equipment to mitigate the physiological stresses and also mitigate mishaps. Some of those stresses include barometric pressure change, hypoxia, spatial disorientation, cognitive threats. The aerospace physiologist has 5 mission sets primarily that we support. The first one is aircrew training. During aircrew training, aerospace physiologists spend about 70% of their time mastering their skills on how the human body is impacted with flight. At the same time, during that period, we are educating our aircrew about their own bodies using a variety of equipment to do that. We deliver physiological training using a didactic approach as well as an equipment approach by altitude or low barometric pressure chambers, where we are able to simulate the aerospace environment to allow our aircrew to practice in a controlled environment and experience how their bodies are going to respond potentially to low barometric pressure threats, as well as the potential for a rapid decompression to familiarize themselves with the equipment and how they are going to respond. We also utilize acceleration devices such as a centrifuge, where we expose members to high G forces so that they can practice the mitigation of potential loss of consciousness with an anti-G straining maneuver. And we also use reduced oxygen breathing devices, which is similar to the altitude chamber, except we're able to use a gas mixture to induce hypoxia, as well as a whole other gamut of spatial disorientation trainers, night vision devices, and other trainers as well. I mentioned earlier that we primarily have about 5 mission sets. It started with aircrew training. As we develop our skill set, we move on to the high altitude intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance mission, where we support the operational execution of the U-2. We support the person with physiological training and with pressure suit operations and the launch and recovery of that weapon system. Moving along in the mission sets, there's another operational mission called High Altitude Airdrop Mission Support, where we support the joint forces, our special operators working at high altitude doing parachuting operations, typically above 18,000 feet. We are responsible for monitoring the aircrew of their physiological state, supporting them with the oxygen equipment that they need to sustain that successful exit out of the aircraft, depending on whatever altitude threshold is designed for the mission. And then I mentioned earlier about the acceleration training that we conduct for the Air Force. And then the last part of this is research. We do support physiological research, typically at the 7th to 11th Human Performance Wing, where we look at new devices, new equipment, how the person interfaces with that to safely support them. One other aspect that I did not talk about was safety. We have a significant role in mitigating mishaps where we educate our aircrew about what causes mishaps from a human factor standpoint. And we also participate in aircraft investigations that occur. Unfortunately, we are the board representative that identifies any human factors that may occur. In this role, we are considered non-rated aircrew. So in that, we have a responsibility and a requirement to fly so that we can understand the aerospace environment. And flying is not optional. It's part of the job, and it's expected, and it's a critical component in the development of an aerospace physiologist so that they can get that practical experience and share that experience when we're educating aerospace physiology training. A day in the life of a physiologist varies from position to position. When you first start physiological training as an officer, it'll most likely be at a flying training unit where an individual will be able to practice and master their skill on the human body in a more controlled environment with the most junior aircrew members. And then as you develop and upgrade in the various stages of training, assignments will allow you to move out and do the other aspects of the mission sets that I previously mentioned. What I wanted to do right now is I'm going to turn it over to Colonel Giovanetti, and she's just going to talk about what are some of the strengths that a candidate must possess that'll help them be successful as a aerospace physiologist. Colonel Giovanetti, over to you.
Thank you, Colonel Massa. Welcome to everybody. I'm glad you're dialing in and getting more information on this very unique career field that has an amazing opportunity for interacting in our mission set for the United States Air Force. So first of all, I wanted to start off with the strengths to get into the career field is it's important to have the correct degree because AFPC will allow what the officer classification guide says we will take into our career field. So for 13H, we will take in a zoology and a biology degree, exercise science or kinesiology, air and space operations with an emphasis in aviation safety, and an applied psychology degree focusing on human factors. So those are the ones that are related to a specific code with your degree. And if you don't have those, it makes it much more difficult to enter the career field if you don't have additional schooling and a master's degree that code for those types of things. In addition to the correct degree to enter into the career field, you must be medically qualified. So that means that you have to have a flying class 3 physical from flight medicine. So flight medicine will likely do a graduation physical for ROTC or for our USAFA cadets. And you have to ensure that it is stamped flying class 3 qualified to ensure that you can do the duties that you are required to do to fly on an aircraft. For our career field, we do fly 4 hours per month on the assigned aircraft that will be at your base. So you will have to be able to obtain and keep that flying class 3 physical in order to continue doing the job. Some other good things that are beneficial for and strengths for the career field would be to be pretty comfortable public speaking. Our job does include, like Colonel Massa said, that didactic portion of our instruction, which is teaching in front of groups of aircrew members. And so that public speaking background can help you to have one less thing to worry about whenever you are trying to understand and learn the material and convey and facilitate that material to our students and our classroom members. Another thing that is notable is to be pretty good at operating independently. You will have a mission set. You will have the mission set of your squadron and your base and your aircraft. But a lot of times, whenever we have to do our jobs, it is a lot of independent operations on knowing how to be a good self-starter and how to communicate effectively through your chain of command. And then lastly, the one thing I wanted to mention would be being able to understand research and be able to convey like literature reviews into some risk management and decision-making opportunities for your chain of command. So in our career field, we are pretty good about understanding science and then conveying that science to our operators. And so if we can help them understand the science and understand how it will impact their operations, it can help them make better decisions on their mission effectiveness. So that's kind of all I had for the strengths part. If you have any questions, please just let me know.
Thank you, Colonel Giovanetti. Also, one thing that I wanted to point out is if you're looking for other information about the career field, I would say get very familiar with the Air Force Officer Classification Directory. Does a great job of outlining the entry requirements, explaining a little bit more in detail what the career field has. Additionally, the Career Development Guide provides information on the career path for an aerospace physiologist, starting from being the most junior to the most senior. And this will provide valuable information as you're making a decision of, hey, is this for me? Do I see a career staying until, I'm a colonel, or no, this is not exactly what I want to do. We are going to post where you could get more information about the career field in this presentation, so you'll be able to have that reference. Additionally, if you have questions about the career field, we encourage you to go to a SharePoint, which we'll post, and reach out to some of the physiological training units. We have numerous training units across the country, and you can talk with the physiologist and say, hey, I'm interested in what you do. Can I come out and shadow you if you have the access to the base? Can I shadow you? Can I find out what's going on? This will make you more in depth with, hey, this is something I want to do, or no, hey, I don't want to do this. This is not what I thought the career field was. I thought I was going to execute exercise classes all day. That's totally opposite of what we do. So definitely encourage those avenues if you want more information about the career field, but reaching out and talking to a physiologist and visiting is probably one of the best things you can do. Okay, at this time, yes, ma'am, go ahead.
This is Colonel Giovanetti. I just wanted to add for our ROTC and our USAFA cadets, one of the greatest ways that you can do that is taking advantage of an opportunity to meet with physiologists on your operational Air Force exchanges. So during those summer periods, if you get Ops Air Force as something that you can do in the summer, most every wing that you might go to for an Ops Air Force experience will have a physiologist or a physiological training unit. And that might be a great way to shadow those day-to-day operations and talk to physiologists and physiological technicians to understand what this career field might be about.
Thank you, Colonel Giovanetti, for that additional information. All right, folks, at this time, I do want to open the floor up for questions that anybody might have. I am going to tell you that the aerospace physiology career field is probably one of the best career fields in the Air Force. But again, you're talking to a person that's been involved with this career field for several decades, so I'm a little bit biased. But we do have other representation on the phone or on the line, excuse me, that can talk to that. So I'm going to stand by for just a second and see if anyone has any specific questions for the folks on the line.
Hi, good morning.
Well,
I actually do have a question. What's the work to life ratio? I've heard like it's a little tough, just for future sake.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
What's the work-life balance for this career field?
The work-life balance. Excellent question. Like most duties, it will be determined by the organization that you're at. But typically, it falls in line with a normal office work hour. However, some of it will require temporary duty away on certain missions or going to courses or meetings or other educational events. So there'll be some time away from a family. There is a deployment requirement as you upgrade and you are qualified. There will be some requirements to potentially deploy. Typically, most of us will deploy a couple of times in a career, in a capacity as a safety officer, as a flight safety officer. So there will be required moves. Officers generally move every 3 to 4 years to different assignments so that they can expand their knowledge and gain more information and prepare them for greater leadership challenges as they go. So there are other commitments besides just a typical workday that would require you to potentially be away on the road and things of that nature. Anybody else can add anything to that question? Colonel Gillespie, go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thanks. I think that's a great question as well. I'll say personally, from my experience in working with other career fields, I think we have a pretty good work-life balance compared to some other operational jobs. You know, Colonel Massa is absolutely right, where there may be TDY and deployment requirements that do come up, but day in and day out, I would say for the most part, we work Monday through Friday, daytime hours. So it's not going to be a whole lot of requirement to be working second, third swing shift kind of things, although those may come up. But I would say overall, our work-life balance is pretty good compared to other jobs. Over.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned deployments. How are the deployments like? And if you have any like stories about your deployments, if you don't mind sharing, that would be great.
Sure.
So Vito, I'd
go
like to
ahead.
share a couple
Go ahead.
anecdotes. So that's a great question, and I thought it'd be helpful to share just some anecdotes of a day in the life of not just a particular one-day snapshot, but kind of over my career as an aerospace physiologist. I will say, in aerospace physiology, we are highly trained and go to a lot of various training opportunities, as well as deployment opportunities, and then the flying opportunities. So, to give you some anecdotes, specifically right off the bat, your question about deployment. So, I deployed as a flight safety officer to Afghanistan, where I was responsible for overseeing the flight safety of the air operations for the units assigned to Gadina Air Base and the outlying forward operating bases. And so when there was aircraft high accident potential near mid-airs or actual aircraft accidents, we go out and secure the aircraft scene for a follow-on investigation. It was very RPA heavy, but then also there was a HAMS unit on the base and went and supported one of the HAMS units that is also, like Colonel Massa mentioned, is supported by our career field, where the HAMS technician, I flew with them on a C-130 unpressurized above 18,000 feet, pushing out 55-gallon drums with a joint precision airdrop system, which is basically a robotic parachute steering device to drop 55-gallon drums of diesel to remote fobs in high altitude locations in Afghanistan, high in the mountains. So just an unbelievable experience traveling all over the AOR in that flight safety role. as well as all over the airfield itself, securing the safe operations for folks at Kandahar Air Force Base. And then I also mentioned highly trained. The training that we go through mirrors what air crew go through, going through the survival school, the resistance training, the Arctic survival, learning how to survive, at 20 below if in a downed aircraft, water survival, how to get out from underneath the parachute under the water. Just the list goes on and on of the training. Flight time in a T-37 cross country in Texas, or my first unit of assignment teaching undergraduate pilot training, flight physiology, but then also flying in the UPT aircraft. And getting multiple hours there. Flying over Denali in an F-16 large force exercise against the F-22s. F-15 BFM over the Gulf test and training range out of Tyndall. Firing minigun out the side of an HH-60 with the folks out at Kadena. Flying 500 feet off the surface of the earth in a C-130 at night on NVGs, low level, with the folks out at Kirtland. So the list goes on and on. One of the amazing things is our flight requirement to fly with the communities that we train and support. I've had the opportunity to be in the back seat of so many different airframes: CV-22s, C-130s, F-16s, F-15s. The list goes on. AWACS. And get to experience firsthand those threats and then better effectively teach those threats to the air crew. So amazing opportunities through safety, through flying, and then through the training that we receive. Right out the gate, when you go to physiology school, you'll be thrown in a centrifuge and taught firsthand how to stay conscious through the anti-G straining maneuver at 9 times the force of gravity, and then remain conscious at high altitudes of a depressurized aircraft in the altitude chamber. So just amazing anecdotal stories that I could share of just the amazing opportunities that make us the professionals to teach aircrew about the myriad of human factors threats that we face. But at the same time, back to your question about work-life balance, have had a really healthy work-life balance where the deployment I went on was a volunteer. Like they needed someone and I raised my hand, and it hasn't been 20 back to back like some of my peers. So a very healthy work-life balance, because the preponderance of what we do is educate aircrew and get them ready before they go out to the AOR for combat operations. So much of what we do is getting the aircrew ready, so that keeps us home station. But then we still have the opportunity to contribute to the fight, like I described. So really just a really amazing career field with amazing breadth of opportunities. You won't be stuck in the office 24/7, but you won't have the grind of doing the same thing day in, day out. Each assignment is varied and different. So just wanted to add those anecdotes to help paint a better picture. Thanks.
Colonel Henderson, thank you very much for sharing that personal experience with everybody. All right, anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, Sophia.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much again for your time. I have a question. So I'm an ROTC cadet and I'll be commissioning next year. And I just submitted the cadet talent survey like 2 months ago. And I'm just like wondering how that would apply in terms of like selection. And I'm asking because I don't think my major is like one of the majors that you guys mentioned earlier that's like highly desirable. And I also want to know how it looks like if I don't get selected. Is there a possible way for me to like still apply again after I commission?
Thank you for your question. I'm not familiar with the talent survey. Is there somebody, who do we got as an ROTC on here? But I
Yes,
can
sir, I
talk
speak
to
to that.
Oh, go ahead. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So for the talent survey portion, so Sophia, that is the information available to all the career fields for selection. It's particular to an aerospace physiologist career field, we're looking at having a strict AFOCD guidance. So if you don't have a major that's listed in the AFOCD that Colonel Massa was referencing earlier, in theory, you won't be, rack and stacked in that eligible pool of cadets. You would have to have a major that is qualified. So regardless of what's in your survey, that is important for everyone to be able to see. The 13H community can also see those comments, but you won't be eligible without meeting those degree requirements, just because that is the entry requirement to the career field. As far as the second question, I'll turn it back over to the 13H team to discuss what it might look like after you're on active duty for our cross flow.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Major McDonald, for the clarification on that. In terms of crossflow, if you commission and you're working another job, and then you consequently go and you get a higher level degree, master's degree in human factors or advanced biology, and you decide that you want to crossflow, there is a process to do that, and it basically requires a review of your records, release from the current career field that you're in. And I believe we have somebody on the line, Captain Garnsey, that actually went through part of this process. So Captain Garnsey, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, sir. Can you guys hear me okay?
Got you loud and clear, ma'am.
All right, sir. So yes, I actually cross-trained into the career field in 2022. Prior to that, I was an acquisitions officer. My degree background is in athletic training, so not necessarily one of the degree fields that were listed, but definitely desired by the career field when I was going through the cross-training process. And it was fairly straightforward as far as coming over to the aerospace biz side of the house. So as long as your career field is willing to release you and you meet all the requirements, it's a pretty straightforward process as long as you look like a good applicant for the aerospace physiology career field. Would definitely recommend. And then again, if you have any questions moving forward, like if you go on to active duty and you obtain a degree that is more reliable, feel free to reach out. I'll still be around and I can help you through that process.
Thank you, Captain Garnsey. Appreciate that. All right. Any other specific questions for our team on the line?
Colonel Massa, if there aren't any other specific questions, I was going to go through a couple of the other questions that I normally get from either email, from ROTC cadets, or from the USAFA cadets in applying to this career field. So some of the things that I've heard, obviously, what is the day-to-day work-life balance? That's a very popular question. Another question that we get is, where can you be stationed? And as Colonel Hendrickson mentioned, one of the first places we usually get stationed are at the undergraduate pilot training bases. So some of those friends that you might have that are going to commission and go on to fly, they can be stationed at the 3 and 4 maybe locations for undergraduate pilot training, and then beyond that, anywhere that we have an altitude chamber could be places that folks can be stationed as well. So we have some of those in Virginia and in Texas and in California and in the National Capital Region and some other locations that might be around the contiguous United States. Once you have done most of your upgrade and you've become a fully qualified aerospace physiologist, you can then pretty much go anywhere. So almost anywhere that we have aircraft, we have aerospace physiologists to ensure that they do their training. We also have worldwide locations, so you can be stationed in Europe, you can be stationed in the Pacific, and a lot of different bases have different mission sets and different aircraft that you can be associated with. And a lot of times there are multiple aircraft at a single base that you can be responsible for their training. So it's really unique really amazing to be able to fly with a lot of those different aircraft. The deployment question comes up a lot, and as Colonel Massa and Colonel Hendrickson said, we are deployable as flight safety officers, so we can go wherever the flying mission is. In an anecdote from me, I went to Iraq and I was at the Baghdad International Airport, and as a flying safety officer there, I did everything on the ramp, as far from the movement and the parking of the aircraft to whenever we hit birds, to whenever we almost hit each other in the airspace as well. So any of those flying safety types of things in order to mitigate things bad from happening, or when they do happen, we are there to help work those mishaps. And then the last one I usually get is, what does the training pipeline look like, or what do my first few years look like in the career field? And like I said, you will get stationed at usually an altitude chamber base where there are other physiologists, and you will upgrade in the courses that we are required to teach for our aircrew members. Once you are familiar with how those operations work and you are qualified and you go to all those different TDYs that we mentioned, you can then go on to be, like I said, a more independent aerospace physiologist, where there might just be one or two of you, or one of you with a physiological technician, and you run the training and the refresher training for those aircraft at that base. So it can be very different depending on where you might be stationed. And besides that, that's all I have for now. Over.
Yeah, thank you, Colonel Giovanetti, for providing that amplifying information. One thing that I did want to mention is we are relatively a very small career field as compared to the other Air Force AFSCs. We have 105 authorizations on the officer side and about 270 something on the enlisted side. However, we are very mighty in the impact that we have on the development of our aircrew. We are the first training event that the majority of our aircrew go through when they start their career. So we do have a huge impact. While we may be small, we get a lot done, and we have a lot of good opportunities. So I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you apply and get accepted to the aerospace physiology career field. Again, if there are any specific questions, or there's something that you just thought about or didn't want to ask in public, but you wanted to talk, feel free to reach out. We provided the link in the SharePoint of information where you can go to get more details on the career field. I'm going to stand by for a little bit unless there's some other folks that have questions or anybody else wants to chime in, but I want to just say thank you on behalf of the United States Air Force, as well as our career field, for this opportunity to talk to you about the aerospace physiology career field. It is a very rewarding career. I look forward to many of you joining our team as we go forth and do our best, and with the great power competition that's on the horizon. And I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. So if there are no other questions at this time, I'll hold off for a couple of minutes and we'll go from there. Take care.
No worry, I'm sorry. And if this is like taking up your time, I don't mind. But if you can answer this question, that'd be great. Do you know how selective the process is? I'm a AY 25 graduate, so I'm graduating next year. I already sent in my top 10 choices. I was just like, I always hear like this career field is like a unicorn. So I was looking at like the ratio for acceptances compared to people who apply for it.
Colonel Giovanetti, you want to take that one on? I don't know about the unicorn piece, but.
So is that for, are you a ROTC candidate or a USAFA candidate?
I'm a ROTC candidate, ma'am.
Yeah, so I think as far as you just submitting your preferences, they have an algorithm that will take into account that degree requirement, your grades, your extracurricular activities, the talent management piece that you mentioned earlier. And I think all of that will go into a score for the ROTC candidates for selection. So it does end up being pretty selective just because we have such few slots. So in most historical cases, we have about 5 to go across all ROTC detachments. And then on the Air Force Academy side, we have 2. And then I think this year we do have 1 that is going to come in from OTS as well. So very few slots just because we are a very small career field. And that does make it selective just because of the numbers.
Yeah, that's correct, Colonel Giovanetti. This year, I think they increased the numbers. We have 6 for ROTC, 3 for the Academy, and 1 OTS. Major McDonald, you have your hand up, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to further speak to that question. So a great question, and 2 clarifying points for Caitlin there. First is you've submitted your preferences so far, but you actually have the opportunity from the 1st through the 7th of April to go back in and resubmit your preferences. So you can go update those preferences you submitted. So if this town hall has maybe changed your perspective and made you want to move 13H to number 1, if it's not already there, you can do that between the 1st and the 7th of April for this year. So please do that if that's something that you're interested in. The next thing I'll say is that the model is the one market model. You can learn a little bit more about how that works on the AFPC's classification YouTube page. If you type that into Google, it'll pop right up. This video will also be recorded and put there in the same location. So that model seeks to obtain the best match for the career field and for the candidates, i.e. the cadets, that want to get into that career field. So your best chance at getting the career field you want is to put your preferences in the order that you actually desire. So if 13H is top of your list, you should absolutely go and update that. And that's going to give you the best opportunity to be matched with 13H versus all of the other candidates that are also competing for that career field. But great question.
All right, I think we got another question. Go ahead.
Hi, I was just wondering if you guys had any like specific pointers on things that we could do as cadets to be more competitive for the field.
Excellent question. I think first would be obviously do the best you can with your academics. The highest GPA definitely stands out. Focus on a degree if you're interested that the career field accepts. I see that we put up the SIP codes. Flying, we value flying. So any information or extra, if you're working towards a private pilot's, that will help you because it'll allow you to understand the aviation environment better. So that definitely is a plus. Physical fitness, not just yourself, but we value that. Yes, it's an Air Force standard, but you are going to be exposed to the rigors that your air crew. So being able to be in the best shape that you possibly can will allow you to succeed. Anybody else? Any other topics that maybe I'm missing, folks?
Just
Excellent
to reiterate
question.
what Colonel Giovanetti mentioned, if you're serious about the career field, find a way to meet up with the physiologist and shadow what they do and get a better idea. And so that firsthand knowledge of what you're asking to be part of would helps immensely if given the opportunity to interview. Again, it's a small career field. You're talking 5 a year, so it's hard. But everything Colonel Massa just said of If you can get the flying experience, obviously the degree type matters immensely, and then anything else to just educate yourself on the career field and know exactly what it does, and then show that true interest, and it's not just something you just put on the piece of paper and rolling the dice.
All right, and anybody else? I see a hand up. Catherine, did we answer your question?
Yes, that was a good answer. Thank you.
Sir, you have a question in the chat. The question is, will flying experience impact our chances greatly?
The answer is a simple no, but it does help you down the line. We value that, but it is not going to separate per se in our value set, I believe, in our rule set that we're looking for. But it will greatly help you as you execute the role of an aerospace physiologist.
Yes, Colonel Massa, I would agree with that. I don't think it hurts on the entrance and the trying to get into the career field, but I think it helps benefit the candidate and then the future officer very much, because you will understand a little bit more of the lingo, a little bit more of the battle rhythm, and understand what happens in the aerospace environment, which also makes your schooling that you do for our career fields. Whenever you get accepted into the career field, you'll likely go to school in about August or September at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for some education before you even go to your first base. And that will make a whole lot more sense if you've had experience in the flying environment. And so that helps you, hang the knowledge that we're giving you on a good framework.
Catherine Reed, did you have another question?
I do, but is my hand still raised? Because I don't know how to put it down.
It is. That's okay.
Okay, sorry. I guess one question that I do have is, how helpful is getting a master's? Because I have an opportunity through the school that I go to either do it in 4 or just add 1 year. Would that be helpful for entrance?
Encouraged, absolutely. As you develop and you move and you progress in rank, having a master's degree is valued. An advanced academic degree is valued. So I would say if you have the time and the commitment and it only requires an extra course or two, personally, I would pursue it. I did that myself. Matter of fact, I have a dual master's from Embry-Riddle, and it just required me to take an extra 3 hours. So that was a no-brainer for me. Over. All right. Anything in the chat I'm missing? Don't see it. All righty then. Well, I think we've spent 53 minutes so far on this town hall. Again, if there are no last minute questions, I just want to say thank you for joining us today. Hopefully, we were able to share information and you're excited about joining the Air Force and the aerospace physiology career field. Look forward to maybe crossing paths with some of you all in the future. So if there's no other questions, we are going to be signing out. Major McDonald, over to you for any other comments for Town Hall.
No, sir, this was great. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Absolutely. All right, signing off from the half, Colonel Massa. Take care, all.